So if I step out from behind the podium, the videographer might get ticked off. I don't want to do that. This is the morning, we're already running behind. I want to thank everybody for coming. I'm going to preach to you maybe a little bit. I can't see you over there. So, you know, when we give a closing argument, I never stand behind the stupid podium because I can't get close to the jurors, look them in the eye, and talk to them about what I have to say. First thing I want to do is tell you I appreciate you coming, but I also want to tell you it isn't enough. It is not enough for you to be here. And I'm going to kind of go a little bit in reverse order. You know, I've done these things before, and I don't know how many of you have come to one of these conferences, read in the newspaper about a person who was convicted on DNA evidence that wasn't challenged in the courtroom. I think CBS on 60 Minutes did a recent study on an ID case, one of the worst, most unreliable forms of evidence, eyewitness identification. It's not enough to read the newspaper and come to these things. And let me make my point. Let me make my point with you. Raise your hand if you think or you support somebody's right to get behind the wheel when they're drunk and go kill somebody. Let me see a show of hands. Anybody? Raise your hand if you want to see somebody go to jail for a crime they didn't commit. Nobody wants to see that happen, right? Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and I'm not here to belittle their message. A big part of my practice is drunk driving defense, and I'm not here to make light of somebody who lost a loved one. I certainly wouldn't want that to happen. I know people who've been involved in alcohol-related car accidents. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, is one of the most powerful political organizations we have in our political system, in the state of Michigan and in Congress. They have so much influence. One of the reasons is because it is a really easy issue if I'm running for office to have the support of MAD. Nobody supports the right of a drunk driver to get behind the wheel and kill somebody. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I go all over the state when I represent people charged with drunk driving, various drug and drug-related offenses. In so many courtrooms, Mothers Against Drunk Driving has a representative there every day. I mean, on one of my cases, there's a sweet little old lady from MAD who's there every time. If we have a hearing on scheduling and we're in the courtroom, she's there because she wants to make sure my client, who's allegedly got a .29 blood alcohol, which is 3 times the legal, more than 3 times the legal limit in Michigan, she wants to be there to make sure he gets justice. Well, maybe justice is the blood evidence is unreliable, right? But that little old lady is there, and the judge knows she's there. And she's putting pressure on that judge. Why? Because she's there. And he knows the next time he's got to run for re-election, she's taking notes about what he did on this drunk driving case. So if he grants my motion to suppress the evidence, the only evidence that can convict my client, she's going to be there, she's going to know about it, she's going to talk to the media about it, she's going to talk to the other little old ladies in MAD. That's pressure. Just by being there, that's pressure. So, if you want to do something, sit in a courtroom sometime. And when the judge sends the law clerk out to see who you are or why you're there, you say, I'm here because I want to make sure a person who didn't commit a crime doesn't go to jail. I'm here because I want to keep an eye on the system. I'm here because I want to make sure that indigent defendants, people who can't afford a lawyer, aren't railroaded through the system, no matter what the crime is, no matter how bad the evidence is. That's just one small thing that you can do among a lot of other things. And let me tell you something, if you go sit on motion day in Ingham County, you are going to be appalled. I am. A plea in sentencing, maybe 5 minutes. The judge doesn't want to hear elocution most of the time. The judge doesn't want to hear a motion. You bring in a motion, I'm not going to grant this thing. There is not just a lack of funding for the attorneys, but a lack of funding for the resources that the attorneys need, and a lack of respect for the attorney's advocacy of their client. counsel, you'd be a lot better off just pleading your client guilty, and let's get him into some programming, and let's get him sentenced to something that makes sense. Your guy's drunk and he's guilty, and let's just get this done and get this off my docket. That's not what the system is supposed to do. That's not why, was it 230 some years ago, people gave their lives and their blood and their property for the right to be presumed innocent until the government brings you into court if you're accused of doing something wrong and proves you guilty. That's what people lived and died for. The Fifth and Sixth Amendment of the Constitution. And it's folks, the ink is fading from the Constitution with greater and greater rapidity. And coming to these conferences is fine, and it's great, but it isn't enough. And I don't want to say I'm not happy that you're here. I'm very pleased that you all came. I mean, I wouldn't be here giving my time. I mean, all of us lawyers, we sell our time for a living. And we're all giving our time today to talk with you and encourage you and try to get you to do something. I'm going to tell you two quick anecdotes before I sit down. And I got to sneak out of here because my wife has a doctor appointment that I promised myself and her that I'd get to. In the 54B District Court, that's the city of East Lansing, the home of Michigan State University, right? We have the contract for indigent defendants who are not students. I'm going to tell you a story about a friend of mine named Kyle. And Kyle was charged with drinking and driving on March 16, 2008. He was stopped by a city of East Lansing police officer. He came to East Lansing from Swartz Creek. He's not a student. He looks like a student. He's about 23 years old. Good-looking kid. And he drives his sister and her friend home from this Sunday party. It's like a pre-St. Patrick's Day party. Michigan State, St. Patrick's Day isn't enough. You gotta have a pre-St. Patrick's Day party. And he's driving his sister and her friend home. He went to make sure they were okay. She's younger than him. He wanted to make sure that there weren't any problems with any guys getting drunk and taking advantage of her. He protected her. He had 2 beers, and then he got bored, so he thought his sister was okay, hopped over to Rick's Cafe, had a Long Island iced tea, went back, picked up his sister and her friend, drove home. On the way back, he's driving his sister's car. He hits the headlight, the high beam, instead of the turn signal. The police officer sees it, thinks it's 12 o'clock in the morning on St. Patrick's Day. I got a drunk. I might get overtime for going to court. I might add to my list of drunk driving arrests. Maybe I'll be the mad officer of the year for the East Lansing Police Department this year. Pulls my friend Kyle over. Kyle says, told him exactly what he had to drink. I had 2 beers and a Long Island iced tea, officer. I'm fine. The officer takes him through the field sobriety tests. Fortunately, it's on video. The officer arrests Kyle even after he passed the field sobriety tests. Takes him to the police station, and he blows. There's a machine called a data master that you blow into if you're charged with drunk driving. You have to blow into it at least once. Kyle blows into it. It's a .09, 1/1000th from being at the legal limit. The officer has him blow again, which he's supposed to do. Give him a second test to confirm it. It goes up to .11. Something's wrong with this picture. The officer has to now give him a 3rd test because the variation is too disparate. It's too wide. Gives him a 3rd test. It's back to .09. Okay, back to the 1st test, but still, what's with the jump? Kyle says, well, can I have a blood test? The officer said, well, you know, I mean, if you really, really want a blood test, you got to pay for it. Talks him out of the blood test. I get appointed to take the case. I file a motion for an expert witness because, to me, something smells funny. And I file that motion ex parte, which means I ask the judge to grant it without a hearing. And you know why? Why do you think I would do that? Because I'm sneaky? Well, I am, but not in this instance. Because I don't want the prosecutor to know what my strategy is. He's got to do his own homework. And we go to court and we have a hearing because the judge denies my order and says, you guys come